Fantasies, so welcome back to my channel. So I'm really sorry if you can hear like music playing in the background. I swear the second I sat down to film this video, they turned on that music, and this is just what we're gonna have to deal with right now. So as you guys know, I don't really do TBR videos unless there is like a readathon happening, and that's again the case with November because it is time for Nonfiction November again. I already participated in this readathon last year and I really enjoyed it because it kind of made me see how much I actually enjoyed nonfiction, and I read a lot of great nonfiction books that month, and I'm hoping to do the same this year. The host of the readathon is a book olive as always, and I will link her channel in the description down below. So this month there are 4 challenges, and they're kind of like words that sound very much alike. So there's 2 words for each challenge, and you can kind of pick which one you want to like take on board as a challenge. It's a very like loosely structured readathon, so you can pretty much interpret the challenges to mean whatever you want and to fit whatever book you have on your shelves right now. That's kind of what I'm doing. So in this video I want to go through the books that I personally want to read for whichever word of the challenge, and then I'm going to give you a recommendation corresponding with the other word in the challenge, if that makes sense. Okay, let's just do it. So the very first challenge is pastime or pastime. So it could be like anything to do with like the past or a hobby. And for this I am actually currently listening to an audiobook that I will just sort of count for this challenge. It's not yet November, but I've already started it because it's really good, and that is Homo Sapiens, I think is what it's called, A Brief History of Humankind by, I can't remember the name, but it's obviously really famous. A lot of people have already talked about it, have already read it and really enjoyed it, and honestly I am so hooked. The audiobook is like 18 hours long, and I'm not even speeding it up because I'm finding it so fascinating and really interesting, and it's just so well like told, and like it keeps you interested. There's no sort of going off on tangents that don't really matter. There's no real rambling on about small details that most people probably won't care about. It's really definitely targeted towards to be read by pretty much anyone who just like wants to know more about the history of humankind, and I'm finding it super fascinating. Because I won't finish it in October, I'm just counting this as my first challenge for the readathon. The one that I want to recommend to you for this challenge actually has to do with the other word, and that is Dancing on My Grave by Kelsey Kirkland. Kelsey Kirkland was a really popular and fantastic, super talented ballerina, but unfortunately she like slipped into a world of drugs and drug abuse, and kind of how that whole thing affected her life and her dancing, and how she kind of departed from that unhealthy. If you're at all interested in ballet or ballerina stories, like I highly recommend this one. It's hard-hitting, it's extremely fascinating, and I just loved it a lot. I really recommend it. The second challenge is Self and Shelf, and for this I want to finally read In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park. I'm counting this for the shelf challenge because it has been on my shelf for an extraordinarily long amount of time. I even put this on my TBR for last year but didn't get to it, so I'm really hoping to tick this off my list today and finally transport it off of my TBR shelf. If you didn't know, where have you been? But this is the story of Yeonmi Park and how she escaped from North Korea, and obviously it's a very popular book and I'm really excited to read it. So the book I'm going to be recommending to you obviously is going to be for the self challenge then, and this is The Fact of a Body, A Murder and the Memoir by Alexandria Marsano-Lesnevich. I just read this last month, I think, and I really enjoyed it. It's definitely not for everyone. It's super graphic and violent and really hard to read because it's about the author's experience with sexual assault as a child, sexual abuse as a child, and how she's confronted with that again as an adult. And I really enjoyed it, but I definitely understand it's not for everyone, so be aware of that going into it. But I mean, if you think that you can handle it, I definitely recommend that you read this. The next challenge pair is Wander and Wonder, and I think that this is probably my favorite challenge, and I think that the book I'm choosing for it could literally count for both, or like a little bit of both, I think. And this is The Lost City of Zed by David Grant, a tale of deadly obsession in the Amazon. It's about a British explorer in 1925 who went into the Amazon jungle in search for a lost civilization. So it's obviously something to do with wander, but also in my opinion with wonder, because this explorer never actually returned, and there's like this sense of mystery around obviously the events in this book, and I don't know, I'm just really excited to read it. I've been meaning to read it, and yeah, this is the time. For my personal recommendation to you, I'm going to be choosing Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. This is a mountain climbing book, and I would say it counts again probably for both Wander and Wonder, but this is about a very deadly mountain climbing event that Jon Krakauer himself was actually part of, and he kind of tells what happened, because there's like different like stories surrounding that particular night on the mountain and Mount Everest. By the way, did I mention that? I don't know. But I really loved it. It's one of my favorite books that I've read this year. I thought it was absolutely gripping and like so suspenseful, even though it was nonfiction, and I just couldn't get it out of my mind for the longest time. So if you're at all interested in that, like even if you're not interested in mountain climbing itself, like I think that you will enjoy this book because it is so good. It's so well written, well researched, and just a wild ride. So finally, the last challenge is micro and macro, and for this I'm hoping to be reading The Gradium Girls by Kate Moore. This is about female factory workers who had to paint like watches, I believe, with fluorescent paint, but the paint was like radioactive, so it obviously had really dire consequences on them physically, and I'm so interested to read this. I haven't bought it yet, but it's like in my cart. I'm planning to buy it super soon. I honestly am just so excited about this book. It sounds super like gruesome, but also interesting, and this is something that I've like vaguely heard of before, but I really want to know the ins and outs of what actually happened back then and like what these women had to suffer. So I find that really fascinating, and I'm really excited to read about that. So that's obviously an event more on like the micro scale, I believe, because it's like a very specific thing, and my recommendation for this is actually also on the micro side. So I'm sorry, but like literally most books could be used for macro. You could be like a history book or like anything like that. So my micro recommendation would be The Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grain, who is also the author of The Lost City of Zed, which I'm planning to read. Killers of the Flower Moon is about the Osage Native Americans and how they were exploited and murdered in the 1920s. There was this string of murders, and people couldn't figure out what was happening, how they were connected, if they were connected. And it's also about the birth of the FBI that then started to get involved but couldn't really come to any conclusions for the longest time. And it's also super harrowing, super terrifying, like to read about what these people had to go through, like what Americans put them through. It is absolutely atrocious. And I've literally never heard of this before. Like, I don't know how. Like, how are not more people talking about these events, honestly? It's also super well researched, super well written. Again, more like a mystery story almost. Like, they don't tell you in the beginning, these people did it. It's like really, like step by step, you're finding out what's happening, and it's so fascinating. And I loved it. I read this book in no time at all, and I really recommend it. So definitely check it out, make it work for whatever challenge you need it to work, because you should read this book. And so that is my like non-fiction part of this TBR. The truth is, like right now I'm actually in a really big fantasy mood, and more specifically a YA fantasy mood. I don't know why, it just happened. One day to the next I'm like, I'm here for all, give me all the YA fantasy. So I have a few like books like that I'm also planning to read in November, and I thought I might just mention them because why not? This is the first book, but I'm planning to read Arabella and the Battle of Venus by David de Levine. I just finished my reread of this book, and it's so freaking good. It's about a world where like Britain has colonized Mars, and Arabella comes from Mars, but she's actually like English, and she has to go back to London. But then she finds out her brother, who's still on Mars, is in danger, and she needs to like hitch a ride on an airship that goes from London to Mars, and she pretends to be a boy so she can get work on board of the ship, and it's just... Can I just say that this is like one of my favorite YA fantasies ever. It is so well written. I love Arabella. It is super fun, and I couldn't put it down the second time around, and I'm so excited for the sequel. So I'm gonna be reading that. And I know that the third book actually also came out this year. I completely missed that, but it did. It's called Arabella and the Traitor of Mars, I believe, and if I like the Battle of Venus, I'm probably also gonna get and read the third book because I'm so hyped. Another YA fantasy I'm planning on reading, or like actually rereading for me, is the Lady Helen series, because the third book, A Dark Day's Deceit, or A Dark Day's Deceit, I'm not actually sure. Again, super hyped about it, and I want to reread the first 2 books so that I can then like instantly go into the third, and it's gonna just be like, oh, an amazing experience, and I'm so excited. I can't even tell you. Oh my god. This next book I might actually still squeeze in October. I don't yet know, but if not, I'm probably gonna read it in November, and that is Red Queen by Christina Henry. For once, it's not a YA fantasy, but it's an adult fantasy. If you watched my Spookathon wrap-up, you saw probably that I read Alice during that week, which is the first book in this duology, and this is the continuation. It's a story inspired by Alice's adventures in Wonderland. It's really gruesome, really graphic, but I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to read the second book. I don't know why I keep saying like, I can't wait to and it's always the same thing. And the final book I am like tentatively hoping to get to, but probably by the time I get to it, I'll be out of my YA fantasy phase. We shall see. But that is The Diviners by Libba Bray. I don't actually know what this is about, but I've heard so many good things about the series, and I want to read it, even though it's super long. Like, all these books I think are huge, so we shall see if I get to it. Yeah, this whole month is gonna be like a real mix and match of like different genres, like the 2 most polar opposites, right? It's like nonfiction and fantasy, like high fantasy, like those are extremely far apart. So maybe that's gonna actually make it so that I will be able to read more of both, because I'll have the like counterweight to sort of balance it out. We shall see. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments if you are gonna be participating in the Nonfiction November readathon, and what books you're planning to read. If you have any recommendations, let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon for more videos every Tuesday and Friday, and sometimes Sundays when I have too many videos to fill the days that I'm usually uploading. I will see you very soon with another video. In the meantime, head on over here to check out some other videos I did, and I will see you then. Have a lovely week. Bye!